Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Join me on the first and third Thursdays on the show, where I have experts from around the country teaching you cutting-edge therapies on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Dr. Diane Hayden. I'm excited today to have on the show with me Ray Bior. She's the founder of Ray Life Coaching and a confidence coming out coach who helps people understand the relationship patterns that shape their lives, combining integrative attachment theory, nonviolent communication, nervous system awareness, and lived experience navigating life as a queer, non-binary, polyamorous, and pansexual person. Ray helps people uncover why familiar conflicts and connection patterns keep repeating. Their work empowers people to build self-trust, communicate authentically, and create relationships rooted in honesty, belonging, and choice. So welcome, Ray. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So this is a cool topic. I love talking about anything relationship oriented, and I've heard of attachment theory before. I've actually read some books, and I have a couple friends who are totally into like learning about it and how it affects relationships and things like that. So we're gonna get into a lot of good stuff today. But I kind of wanted to start with you by saying, why do so many people feel like they keep having the same relationship over and over and over again? Even when they change the people, they change their job, they change their environment, their friends or circumstances or whatnot, but they kind of keep winding up with these same patterns.
Yeah, and it's not the same people really. It's
Right.
whatever they're coming with, right? It's whatever their emotional blueprint might be activating and they're seeing in the other person. So I consider it a mirror of what's happening internally. So, and that's why we talk about attachment theory, is because if you're not recognizing what's happening internally, then yes, you're going to see um, this person in front of you, whether it be your boss, your friend, or your love relationship or family, um, the same patterns that are coming up are really about how you treat yourself in the end and what you're used to, how you're used to responding to behavior, whether it be yours or or the other person's.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I can look at like a couple of my girlfriends who are single currently because they keep attracting the same guy. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, like, completely could be completely different type of person from the perspective of like their what they do, their background, their family, the kinds of relationships they've been in, but yet the relationship is exactly the same. The same things keep happening. They get cheated on, or the person is avoidant, or they just aren't getting their needs met, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're different person, same relationship.
Right. And I think a lot of the time we may be complaining, right? We break up or someone breaks up with us or our boss or our employee, whatever the relationship is, we complain about it, whether to somebody else like you, your friend, right? And um, but the reality is it's comfortable. Our nervous system is used to the familiar. And so we try to protect, our unconscious is trying to protect the safety. And so, although we complain about this, it's also comfortable because the unfamiliar is very scary. We don't know, and a lot of the time we're highly addicted to that drama that happens. And so we can talk about that later, but that familiar dynamic is what our subconscious is holding on to because it's used to it. It's a survival mechanism that happens within us. So that's why it keeps on looping because we haven't gotten to the root cause and the root part of why, you know, that
Yeah.
familiarity aspect of the relationship.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Although I don't know if I explained that to them, if it would make total sense to them. But like when you're
Yeah.
objective, right, you can see and you can kind of understand how that can be happening. So before we get too deep, let's talk about what attachment theory is, because there might be some people listening who've never heard that term before, who were unaware that there is such a thing and, and how it works. And it's not just relevant for romantic relationships, right? It's also could be with your like a parent or a friend
Absolutely.
or even your job, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 1940s to 1980s and all the way to now, but that's when the term started with John Bowlby, started the studies for attachment theory. And then Mary Ainsworth really coined some of the specifics of the styles. And of course, we've developed even more since then. But attachment theory is the study of how we learn to connect and seek safety and respond to closeness with other people. Most of us think of our relationships are driven by conscious choices. In reality, much of our relationships behavior happened automatically through patterns we learned from our life, but mainly between 0 and 8, because that tends to be, they actually say 0 to 2 is like the most formative years, because that's when we are surviving, right? We need our caregivers to provide us with all of the learned needs, all our food, our, companionship, and to be there for us. And we can't communicate or walk, so very much needed. So as children, we adapt to the environment we grew up in, and we learned how much of ourselves is safe to be expressed, right, in order to survive, and whether our needs matter, how to ask for support, whether people are reliable and consistent, how conflict gets handled, and whether or not we're going to actually get our needs met if we don't or do these things, and these adaptations become relationship templates that often follow us into adult. But that doesn't mean that they don't change, right? Mattering upon the circumstances. Like you said, in your family dynamics, you might find out, like, oh, I feel like I healed. And then all of a sudden I go into my family dynamic and I am 2 years old again, or
Yeah.
30,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, you know, but and certain situations will do that to you. The closer, I think, the more intimate a relationship, whatever that means to you, that really triggers some of those wounds, will then bring up how you deal with, safe or unsafe situations, how you support yourself or set boundaries. And there was another part to this. It's not just as a child, right? It's also if you have a very dramatic situation in your life and it sparks what I call the familiar. Familiar is like a big word, the familiar principle, which is firsthand experiences, your auditory experiences, and your modeled experiences. And then couple that with what I call the ERs, which is your emotions plus repetition. And if you have those three, as well as very emotional situations repeated, then it gets ingrained into your system. And that can happen very quickly if it's very emotional and tragic. And it sparks those three items, the FAM of the familiar. And that's how it gets ingrained into your subconscious.
That is so interesting. Like I have two examples that I I can think of, like right off the top of my head, one mine and one of my girlfriends that is the single one that kind of always ends up in these same relationships. Like her childhood, growing up in the household she grew up in was very volatile. Her mother was uh, mean to them, like, said terrible things to her and her siblings. And in fact, interestingly enough, her older sister and older brother were both adopted because her mom couldn't have children. And then my friend is actually the biological child. So there's that whole dynamic in there. But
Yeah.
her mother, like, would do, like, the story she tells is like, oh my God, like, I can't believe like, they would hide because they thought that she was going to, like, really physically hurt them, and the things she said to them, and blah, blah, blah. And every single relationship she's been in has been with a guy that has been completely emotionally unavailable to her. Like, I didn't, like, they don't tell each other they love each other. They're like, she's dating somebody for 2 years and they're pretty serious and they've never said that. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't
Hmm.
relate to this at all. Like, I'm the exact opposite. I get involved with somebody, and I'm not saying this is right either, but like 6 months down the road, we're like madly in love and saying it, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just so
Hmm.
interesting just to see like the different dynamic. And what you're saying is exactly how this happens, right? Because of that situation that she grew up in, she was not safe. And so now that's projected onto these different relationships.
And it's all about how you also treat yourself. So the theory is that what you're getting is actually what you did not learn how to do for yourself, right? Because from zero to whatever, and this again, this happens even during adulthood. You can move from one attachment style pretty, with a really traumatic event or reverse. So if if you're being taught how to be treated, then that's all you know how to treat yourself. So, inevitably, what happens is looking at how you really care for yourself. A lot of us don't know how to even describe care for ourselves fully. And that's like, when it comes to your friend or even yourself, it's like what does attachment even look like? What does intimacy even look like? A lot of people don't know how to fully define that.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that for sure. Yeah. And interestingly, like, my scenario was, the tragic thing that happened to me was my father passed away when I was 27. And
Mm.
I mean, I realize that's not super young, but most people's dads don't die like before they're 30. And it was kind of sudden, even though he had had an illness for most of his life. He was a type 1 diabetic, but still it was like heart attack gone. Didn't have a chance to like say goodbye or like any of that stuff, right? So interestingly enough, like the kind of men the relationships that I was in before that happened were guys that were like very jealous, kind of like always like on top of me, but then somehow managed to go cheat on me. And after my father, the type of person that I was with was more loyal but emotionally unavailable. And it's so, like, I could look at every single relationship before that happened and then the relationships after, up until the one I'm in now, which is the most healthiest one that I've been in my entire life. But
Huh.
so interesting, right? I'm like, wow, like, and I always knew there was something, it has something to do with that, with him dying that suddenly, that um somehow I just knew there was a connection there.
Huh. Okay.
We can decode that at another time.
Yeah, that sounds
But
it
this is
sounds
really,
deep. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I get good that I have the awareness about it, and an interesting thing to unpack at some point. I think this is awesome. We're gonna get, like, I want to get more into like the different attachment styles and all that kind of stuff, but it's so fascinating to me. And like, I think really important for people to understand and learn about this so they can kind of see like, wow, why are these patterns happening in my life? Why am I attracting this kind of person? And how can I improve these things and, have more healthier relationships and all of that. So I love it. We're actually going to go to a quick break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be exploring more with Ray Beer. She's the founder of Ray Life Coaching. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Ray at her website, which is www.raylifecoaching.com. That's RAYLIFECOACHING.com. So we were talking about like attachment styles and, how things can happen in someone's life and how that can affect the type of attachment style maybe you have or the type of relationships or person even that you're attracted to or that you get into relationships with. And also, I mean, it's not just romantic relationships, it's friendships and families and jobs, the people that you connect with at your work and all of that. But so before we get too deep into this, let's talk about there's four primary attachment styles, right? And so what are those four styles? And then how do they typically show up in people's lives?
Okay. So I'm going to start with secure. That usually isn't started. Normally, people don't start with that. But it tends to be a person who isn't perfect, um, and they have feelings, but they're comfortable with closeness and interdependence because they trust themselves to take the time to process, and they know what it looks like to process their emotions. They can ask for their needs. So, in order to ask for their needs, they actually have to be able to sit with the uncomfortability of conflict within themselves. They can hear a no because they also want that in return. They can repair and negotiate and be accountable for their actions. Um, that can show up as somebody who probably asks for what they want, and knows where their limits are, sets boundaries and communicates them, and is willing to walk away when needed, when it's a non negotiable. That they rely upon themselves enough, but also can listen. And they don't do just, hard withdrawals. They're consistently showing up with little things and talking about them and negotiating through them. Anxious attachment style. Anxious, preoccupied are pretty much that. They're preoccupied with everything outside of themselves. They tend to gravitate to more dismissive, avoidant tendencies or fearful avoidant, and those are the other two. They often seek reassurance because they're looking for some stability for themselves. They may worry about abandonment, so they might get really nervous when things aren't consistent. They may overfocus on relationship cues and pay attention to them a lot. Dismissive avoidant is kind of the opposite side of the spectrum. However, all of the insecure, which is the anxious and dismissive, and then the fearful avoidant, are insecure attachment styles. The only one that's secure is the secure attachment style. So, dismissive avoidant value independence, and they may pull away during vulnerability. They were taught that their needs don't matter, but in their reaction to that is not speaking their truth in the small moments. They they don't really pay attention to their emotional body, and they may stuff it a lot, and you might not know that they have feelings at all, and they may not know that they have feelings at all. They have a very, very small emotional bandwidth, and they may struggle expressing emotional needs, obviously. Um, and I didn't really say how anxious attachment, I like to say anxious attachment and dismissive are like the opposite in a way, because they tend to like attract each other, and the spark is there in between because they reflect how they treat themselves. So anxious attachment is dismissing their own needs too, and so isn't dismissive avoidant, but they're responding to that in different ways based on their learned behavior from either their caregiver or a traumatic event. Fearful avoidant is trust. Their main wound is the trust wound. And so they desire connection, but fear it. And their fears get really, scared of too connected, too over attached. Often experiences a push and pull dynamic. So you might find they say one thing and then back away really quickly, or um, you know they tend to have very explosive emotional, they're very hyper vigilant and will notice any lie that might be happening because they have such a strong trust wound, and may move toward and away from intimacy. Like you feel they tend to have a very uh, expressiveness to them. There is definitely something there in a fiery expressiveness. And I don't know if there's anything else you have a question about in
I was gonna
regards
just
to the
can
attachment.
I'm thinking the answer is gonna be yes, but can you be different styles with in different scenarios? Like one attachment style, let's say with your romantic, relationship, a different attachment style with a family member or a friend or job or
Absolutely.
yeah.
And the reason is because people are different.
Mm, right.
And on top of that, for instance, I'm just going to make an example. You might have, for myself, I tend to lean anxious, but around a family member who's more anxious, I tend to lean more dismissive.
Mm,
However, if you've learned skills around one side or the other, you might be able to utilize those skills to work with those people. So, yes, and you can change, right? You can change your attachment style. So, and some things don't trigger you as much, right? So you might look really secure in one scenario, but that's because, like I said, intimacy or that thing that really gets you, that feeling of what I call is the spark, and that's not always good. um, that really gets you can make it's almost this is the same thing. This is a good example, actually. When people get angry and they have two languages, they revert to their first. It's kind of the same thing, or they
mm.
start to express themselves in the youngest manner of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 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 definitely, definitely. Um, so how do you tell the difference between like so you let's say you have multiple relationships and it seems like you're always attracting the same kind of person, right? How do you know that it's not a problem with that person versus the pattern that you're bringing into these relationships? Like how can people learn that that's more the mirror than it is that person?
It's funny when you asked that question, I went straight to my own experience and maybe to other people who are in polyamorous or open relating. Very intimate relationships can make it really obvious. You learn a lot about yourself and your attachment style and what sparks it and what doesn't. So for me, I actually had a situation where I had more than one relationship that was very anxious. The other person was a little bit more anxious than I was. So I knew how to deal with that better um, because I understood it. Like I understood my own anxiety.
Mhm.
However, then I started dating somebody who was very, more on the dismissive side. And it triggered me, but in a way that I thought was attraction. And this is what I'm talking about, the spark. A lot of people say they get into a dating. It wasn't, there was no spark. And it was like, hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
Juicy.
Hmm.
Because what the spark to me says is that there are lots of lessons there. And if you don't know what those are, and the other person is also not in the same interest of learning. And like I said, the secure attachment doesn't mean that you don't have the knowledge of what sparks you, really. It's more that you take that pause and you have the capacity to know what's needed in order to work with that learning, because that's really what it is. That spark is about learning. And if both of you aren't willing to be on the same page about learning, if it's a really strong spark, then it means there's a lot of learning there. And some people have already learned it, right? You can, like for me, now I know that spark means, oh, yeah. And then I start paying attention. I start paying attention to what behaviors are coming up from that side, and go, oh, okay, that's why I'm attracted, you know and then see whether or not they're returning a behavior of knowledge or working with me in that space. And if they're not, then I'm done. But that's the thing, it's knowing yourself. That's, I think, what attachment styles is there for. It's in order to understand the behaviors related to these insecure attachment styles, and be able to really recognize it so you can go, oh, instead of taking it personally.
I love it. It's so fascinating to me. And I mean, it's so cool though, because once you understand this, you can operate so differently, so much more, I think, healthier in relationships, and learn the things you're supposed to learn from that person, and have all these things that trigger you all the time, and like the negative stuff, like kind of move past that, and what all of that. So we're going to get into a lot more. This is really super cool. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Ray Bior. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. I am talking today with Ray Bior. She's the founder of Ray Life Coaching, and their site is www.raylifecoaching.com. That's spelled RAYLIFECOACHING.com. So I'm excited to come back to this segment because we're going to do a little quiz, and Ray's going to find out what attachment style I have, right?
Well, at least in the scenario
Maybe.
that you
Yeah.
decide to pick, yes.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm
Uh,
ready.
okay, so I want you to think of a time, a particular scenario, very specific, an actual scenario with you and somebody else, at least one person, that you felt triggered, that you felt, and then you had a reaction or wanted to do something. And
I
the
already have
trigger,
it. I definitely had a
okay,
reaction.
okay, do you mind
Yep.
telling me what it was? So we
Yeah.
can kind
No,
of, okay.
not at all. So, we store I have a little like roadster BMW Z4, and we store it over at my partner Chris's mom's house. She has a condo in West Hartford, because at the house, I'm in my mom's house, like long story, but the garages are, we have her car, his car, whatever. We went to go pick it up when we got back from Florida about a month ago, and we went over there together. Um, it was Mother's Day. For those of you who know me, my mom has recently passed. And so that in and of itself, I'm sure, was like a whole, thing for me, just that being that day, my first Mother's Day without her and that kind of thing. Anyway, we drove over there together. We visited his mom. He was gonna stay, and I was taking my car, and I was going to meet a couple of girlfriends who've also lost their moms, and we were just gonna have brunch together. Well, we go down to the garage to get the car, and the battery's dead. And I literally have like an hour and a half to get back to my house to change my clothes because I just threw on exercise clothes to go over there and grab my car. Wasn't ready, whatever. So now I'm freaking out because I don't have a car and I got to get back to the house. And what am I going to do for a car? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, and so I'm thinking like, well, what could I do? Could I take Chris's car and then maybe he could Uber back to the house and I'll have a girlfriend pick me up or whatever. But I didn't vocalize that. All I said was, well, how about if I take your car and you can Uber back to the house? And he said to me, what? You're not taking my car. I need my car for errands today. And I was like, I mean, my head almost exploded because I'm just like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? Am I going to Uber? Like, whatever. So, of course, he ended up letting me take the car. And the rest is irrelevant. Like, I came back here, my girlfriend picked me up. His brother ended up coming by his mom's. He drove him home. It was no big deal. But that statement, you're not taking my car. I was like, are you kidding me? You know, it's Mother's Day. My mom just passed away. Like, why are you being such a jerk? Just let me take the freaking car. I was not happy.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that you offered a solution to a very stressful situation,
Oh,
and he instantly turned you down without, like, as a, I can't believe it, like, that you would even suggest this thing. And it became kind of like an opposition, like a, there's no other solution. Instead, it's just a no. Did you
right.
feel like that
Exactly,
barrier?
right. Like it was a no, and he didn't offer any other solution.
Hmm. So when that happened, and as you're talking about it, what feeling comes up or feelings that come up instantly in your body?
Yeah, so angry, frustrated,
Hmm.
um, unsupported.
Hmm.
Like, why do I have to think of everything? Like, why do I have to come up with another solution? This is a solution.
Hmm. And so this is a part of the process of what secure attachment looks like, because a lot of us don't go pause. Okay, so the pause is really this, what I call the bias, band bias in our bodies. So what we're doing right now is the B part is our bodies. When you had that feeling, where was it located in your body, or is multiple places?
I'm gonna say like it was either like my chest or like maybe the pit of my stomach or
Mm.
both because I was mad.
Mm-hmm. Like a sinking feeling, a heaviness, or no?
No, more like
Okay.
anger.
Anger. Okay. Fire. A little bit of
Yes,
fire.
exactly.
Heat.
Hmm.
Okay. So these are signs of things in our body that are telling us something. And sometimes there's patterns within our bodies that if we pay more attention, it becomes a pattern of, oh, that's that feeling. Just like what I was talking about, the spark, that's a feeling in our body.
Hmm.
And there might be multiple sparks, you know? So we could call these, it might be like fire, you know? That's you, but that happened. Okay. So now we're going to get to, well, we'll skip over I and we'll go into the action, what you did or wanted to do in that moment. And what I heard, let me just, there might be more. What I heard was you got kind of like oh my God, like he went like this and you went against it. You pushed back. Is that how would you describe your action feeling
In
after
the
having that
actual,
emotion?
yeah, in the actual moment, I was not mad. I was focused on finding a solution. It was it was more like, okay, then what do you want me to do? And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, do I take an Uber back? Maybe your mother can drive you back or something. Like, there's got to be some other solution. And then he was like, okay, yeah, I guess you take the car and I'll figure it out. I'll either Uber or my brother's here. Somebody can get me back. Like, it was like instantaneously, it was a no. And I was like, what? And then we did find a solution, but
Yeah.
I was still pissed. Like, later on that night, we got into a huge fight about it because I was like, how could you say, like, what was that response? And I was mad, like the maddest I've been in a long time. And then of course he says to me, "Do you think that you're more upset because it's Mother's Day and your mom?" And then I just lost it because I was like, "What? Don't bring her into this. There's nothing to do with that." Blah 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 blah. Like, you should have supported me by saying, "Of course, don't take the car."
Yes.
So I felt like in the moment I paused because my rational brain needed a solution for me to get back to the house and go
Mm,
do what I needed to do. Um,
mhm,
that doesn't always happen. Sometimes and obviously it wasn't a pause enough to think through, well, why did he say this? Like, that's not who he is. He does so many
mm,
things for me. It's like, I understand what you're saying with that pause. It's like, you need to not, it's, you get this trigger and you need to stop before you react or speak or whatever, because
mhm.
I know that he's not, you know, a selfish person that's just going to be like a jerk and say, no, you're not taking my car because I want to drive my car today. It's a nice day. I'm going to put the sunroof down, blah, blah, blah. You figure it out.
So it sounds like what you received was not matching your image of who this person would normally be in this
E-
scenario, and
exactly.
a little bit of like unevenness, and maybe a little bit of like, oh, this was triggering for him as well, and a little bit of like trust in being there for you in this moment might have not been as received in the moment, and you had to take over.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the next part is the story. Like, what are you telling yourself about in that moment? That I heard a little bit like he's not, it's usually about the other person or about yourself. It could be either way, but whatever the
Right.
story is.
He's not supportive. He's selfish. I have to do everything myself. Why do I have to figure this out? Like, why couldn't he give me help me with, you come up with a solution then. If you don't want me to take your car, offer me another solution.
Right. So it's like a takeover. Like I have to do the work again. I can't rely upon you to be there for me. Um,
Right.
yeah.
All that.
So the
Mhm.
the eye of this is the ingrained belief. And this is a part of my free package on my website, which is the Confidence Toolkit. And there's like a list, and I would give you the list, and you would just look at it and be like, "Oh, those really resonate." I'm
Okay.
wondering if there's like, it's usually like I'm helpless, I'm trapped, I I have to do like I have to do it all. I'm trying to think of one for you in particular,
Hmm.
but like I can't. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not
I think it's that
considered.
feeling like, I have to always take care of myself. If I want to get anything done, I've got to do it. Like, it always falls back on me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who has to do whatever it is to get
Mhm.
something done.
Mhm. So would you like to know what I like kind of assessed just by some of the words that were used and the
Yeah,
feeling state?
sure.
So the one thing that really I think is a big one is the fire. Um, and the response afterward, that real deep, like, feeling in that moment. And the response afterward was like,
Hmm.
like, and that's definitely not dismissive avoidant, just so you know. Like,
True.
they are not gonna, nope, it's not gonna happen. Um, but it possibly could be fearful avoidant.
Hmm.
Because fearful avoidant tend to have really strong responses, and they remember things, you know, and they can do that cold cut of like, I'm going to get serious, where you were just like, I'm just going to get serious. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to, they tend to be a little bit more on the avoidance side in that when it's not working, I'm going to put on that face. They're a little better at doing that.
Hmm.
And it can be a strength, right? Of protecting yourself and getting your needs met. Um, so I would sway in that space in that scenario just because of the fire that you were feeling in that space. And you utilize some skills in that you paused, you took care of yourself, because sometimes in these attachment styles, there are strengths, being able to speak your feelings. An
Hmm.
avoidant really is not good
Wouldn't.
at that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah,
are
that's
strengths
true.
to each side of the insecure attachment style that you can use to your benefit.
Yeah. I have something to say, but we got to go to a quick break. So we're back. We're on the Dr. Diana show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. I'm talking today with Ray Bior. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I'm talking today with Ray Bior, and their site is www.raylifecoaching.com. So when we went to break, we were talking about what attachment style, uh, based on this scenario that I just gave, that you think was where I was coming from, and I would agree. Probably fearful. Um, I don't I don't identify with the anxious attachment style at all, but I definitely at some time, it's like at some points in my life or with some relationships or you know friends even or family members, I've definitely seen some of the dismissive in me. I can kind of be like, okay, like I'm done with you. I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I'm just going to guess, but you can define this or clarify for me. But usually that happens because we haven't done the small incremental steps along the way of saying our feelings, our needs, our limits, and then setting our boundaries. Instead, what happens? It get accumulates, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, nope,
100%.
done.
Yep,
Yeah,
100%. That was a
which I think
little
is
bit of
pretty.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a little bit of my relationship with my mom actually until the last few years of her life. But for the most
Mm.
of our relationship together, the most of our life together, I did not make boundaries. I did not say like things that probably should have been said and like that kind of thing. So I was definitely more dismissive with her. There's no fire, there was no screaming matches, but I could easily kind of like walk away and be like, okay, I need a break from her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people, the length of relationship as your mother,
Yeah.
might determine that. Like you've learned over time that this is what you have to do in order to even be in any connection with them.
Hmm.
And sometimes that is what happens if you don't decide to actually totally separate yourself. Right.
Right.
So it might look very avoidant because it has to be, in order to stay in connection sometimes. Not has to be, but it's if you're not setting your boundaries and really being honest with your limits, then most likely you're just avoiding,
Right.
if you're not saying the things, and because it's really tiring, right? It's really
Yeah.
tiring to continuously be saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. 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 For sure. So, how do these attachment styles influence like the way that we communicate or handle conflict or establish boundaries and trust and all that?
Well, I could go with boundaries pretty easily.
Okay.
Pretty much all of the attachment styles are not good with boundaries. However, matters how you define boundaries because avoidant, dismissive avoidant tend to be actually really good with ginormous boundaries.
Right.
Um, but they don't always speak them. Actually, I would say the words aren't there usually. They will hint, maybe. They will, um, but what will happen is they'll slowly withdraw. It's inaction.
Mhm.
Um, and so that is a boundary, but it's a very damaging boundary. It can be very damaging over
Yeah,
time.
because the other person doesn't understand. Like,
Yeah.
why are they avoiding me, or why are they retreating, or why are they kind of like backing off? And yeah,
Hmm.
without vocalizing that, the person who's on the receiving end of that is like, what's happening? You know?
Right. And usually, even with that question, they might not actually know.
Mm,
It's very possible that they aren't aware of how that's being perceived because
mhm.
dismissive avoidant are again kind of opposite from anxious, where they're paying way more attention to themselves because that's what helped them survive. And remember, attachment styles were kind of taught to us or bred into us over and over again in order for us to learn how to survive in certain circumstances. So
Right.
they're there to protect us. And in that way, there's a positive to it. But if you don't know that you're doing it, you can't make a conscious choice around it.
Right.
Um, Now, anxious attachment, boundaries, yeah, not so much.
Right.
There's
Right.
a lot of
What's
yeses.
that?
There's a lot of yeses. There's a
Yep.
lot of, I would even say, being something you're not. They fawn a lot. They may slowly become what they think you want them to be, and
Mhm.
they might not know they're doing that. And I will attest to it. I've been there. Um, and they might be almost the stalker in a way. Like the worst case scenario is they're like freaking out that you are backing away. So the backing away really actually attracts them like a moth to a flame. Um, and now the fearful avoidant can be both. They have a threshold, for them. There's a limit, and it might be a really fine limit. They may be closer to dismissive, but they have a fire about them. So when they will pay attention to every little increment, and when it comes to boundaries, they they can seem loosey goosey, and then they can flip on the other side, you know, and they might tell you how they feel a lot. So that's another part, but it'll be in a not so nice way a lot of the time, if that makes sense. There was another
Totally.
question, not just boundaries. You had a conflict,
Yeah,
maybe?
just or communication in general or conflict. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we spoke about dismissive avoidant, they tend to not have a very long threshold for emotions or talking about them. So they're not going to talk, they're not going to initiate that. And they actually expect others to do that work, and they're not going to want it either.
Right.
So their communication is surface. And the deeper it gets, the scarier they get, the more fearful they get. Now, fearful avoidant are going to notice everything, and they're going to keep that knowledge forever. They're not going to resolve, just like all of them, they're not going to exactly resolve the solution all the time, but they're going to remember it. They're going to bring it up. they have trust wounds, remember. So their trust wounds means that they're like, oh, I remember you did this before, you know, oh,
Hmm.
so you're going to
Yeah,
betray me
I totally
again.
get that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then anxious attachment is, they might communicate, but it'll be passive aggressive probably. It'll be under the radar. They might cry a lot. They might have a lot of emotions. Um, yeah, they might whine a little bit. Their conflict, they don't like conflict either, but they might try to, they're also seeing what's happening they're paying a lot of attention to what's happening on the outside. So that part of it is kind of similar to the fearful avoidant, but they're not going to be fiery, and they're going to be very submissive in their approach.
Yeah. So if listeners could begin changing one relationship pattern tomorrow, like where would you suggest they start?
Oh, well, I would suggest they start no, I would suggest they start at my free confidence toolkit, really.
Yeah. Awesome.
What we did, is really simple, and the more you do that, the more you can start tapping into the language of your subconscious, which is your emotions. And the more you do that with yourself without anybody else, the more you'll be able to notice other people, what they're doing, how you're feeling. Take a pause, because when you're doing it on a daily basis, you're taking a pause for yourself. It's a self care measure.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I would say that would be the first step. That's the first thing I bring people to, because it is so important. It seems so simple, but it isn't. We don't want to deal with our emotions.
Yeah, I know. So go to your website, raylifecoaching.com, and the confidence toolkit is on there. Like it's easy for people to find. Okay.
Yeah, you go to the resource page and scroll down, you'll see email and name. All you'll get is a welcome email. It's an email process
Hmm.
with a video and a workbook. You'll get 4 emails after that go through the first 3 lessons of the confidence toolkit and then integration. The first one is what we did, the bias key.
Yeah.
The next one is reprogramming your ingrained belief. So then you have a solution to help yourself retrain the way you're dealing with everything outside and inside. And then
Yeah.
the last one is your needs, taking care of yourself. How do you provide your needs for yourself so that you know how to find them out there?
Awesome. Well, this has been so great, so fascinating. I loved it. I loved it for sure. And
Oh, thank you,
hopefully,
Diane.
yeah, of course. Hopefully, everybody goes to your website, raylifecoaching.com, and guess that. I mean, everybody needs to do this, honestly. Like it's so, so helpful, I think. So thank you again. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into the show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific. I will see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.